I believe we're live.
Okay.
We'll check on my end.
Okay, thanks.
Tim, can you hear me?
I can. Yep.
Okay.
And you look like a logo head.
Yeah. I don't know. I can never get my camera to work, so I just leave it off.
Well, some places ask you to, because that reduces the
Mm-hmm.
bandwidth. Joanne Mulligan, come on down. Hey,
Hello.
Joanne. Did you hear me being silly?
No, my thing cut out.
Oh, okay. I said, Joanne Mulligan, come on down. And we are live, by the way. Sean just texted me. I gotta go close my office door for one thing.
I had to close mine too. Can you take messages? If anyone calls, just take a message. Everyone is not here.
To take a look at the YouTube screen.
Yeah. If it's anyone with a membership,
Bit rate.
but I will call them back in like an hour. Okay. Like walk on my call about his computer. Tell him I'll call him back. I'll call him back. Hi, Alish.
Hey, how's it going? My WebEx is running really slow for some reason. I don't know what's going on. All right, cool.
Hey, Leash.
How's it going?
Going good.
So we got this says 4 right now.
Yeah, the one is Natalie. That looks like a logo person. Here comes Tony.
Yeah, I'm trying to change my name on it. I don't see where I can.
Hey, Tony.
Hey.
Please.
Are we expecting anyone else, Elish?
I don't think so. I think Vanessa had a conflict. She can't meet during the day. There was going to be like one or the other missing, either Vanessa or Tony. So I think we just wanted to make sure we had like the 3 out of the 4 basically.
Let me jump in and say we are streaming now. So
Okay.
just letting you know.
Yeah, no worries. So yeah, so this was sort of the best window. We have like a tight 30, so I want to try to get going like now-ish. So I don't think anyone's hopping in. I did.
It's a tight 30 plus for the benefit of Tony and Joanne and Natalie. I have 4 or 5 things to just update you about, which I presume you want to do, Elish, after talking about the closing hours.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
okay.
Yeah. I think we should have time, hopefully, for everything. I don't know if everybody had a chance to look over the stats that were sent. I don't know if maybe Natalie or Tim, you have like just a quick Cliff Notes version of like the data that we're looking at, because there was a couple different attachments, but like my understanding from both the listening tour and me physically going to the library is just the traffic significantly drops off between 7 and 9. And so it's just slow for those 2 hours. And it was suggested multiple times by staff during the listening tour if we could close at 8 p.m. and follow suit from a lot of the libraries in the area, what they did during COVID and have continued to keep with those hours. I think the only library that's going to be open till 9, if we do change our hours, would just be Bethlehem, but they have the traffic to support that being the case. Whereas we have the 2 times I went, I would say there was as many people in the library as there was staff. And for safety reasons, we have 2 staff per room. So for every room that's open, that's 2 staff. So in my personal opinion, I wasn't really seeing like a justification for keeping it open that extra hour. I know that potentially might affect a handful of students that might come in during that time, but we do offer a boosted Wi-Fi signal out into the parking lot. So there is the potential that people could, if they are coming into the library for use of Wi-Fi, they will have that access still. So that's just my 2 cents on it. And then I also personally called over to Voorheesville to speak to their director, Sarah. She did offer us some of her feedback in an email, but I wanted to ask her a couple questions. And so basically they said that they had changed their hours during COVID. They never adjusted them, once things started clearing up, and they have had no negative feedback from any patrons. The staff is a lot happier, that their time's being shifted into a busier time and they can, do what they're paid to do. And just offered some suggestions based on our setup. I wasn't sure, so I can get to those after, but I wanted to see if anybody had any questions just based on the data, and if Natalie can give just kind of like a quick summary of the data that was provided.
Yeah, I think I'm just talking with Christina, and basically the magic number is 2. I think actually the average was 1.5, but you can't have half a person. So it was like the average that would come in the last hour would be like 2 people using the study room, 2 people going to the reference desk or in children's, and like 2 people on the computer. So she just said like the magic number was 2. Like to Alicia's point, like it significantly drops off. So, and also like, yes, there might be students using the study room, but they're typically SUNY Albany students. And they do have, I mean, if they're a SUNY Albany student, they have access to the campus at SUNY Albany. I think it's just their preference that they just like coming here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure, just one minor point. I don't think Bethlehem has high numbers between 8 and 9 either. I'm not sure about that, but I think that I've heard that. So Albany made this change from 9 to 8 in 2013 and Colony, I believe, in 2014. And I don't know if any of you guys were board members back when we were dealing with, we were closed due to COVID and construction, and there was this guy in the community who wrote 2 letters to the editor comparing us to Colony. So there was this brief like, Colony is better than Guilderland, but not even they are open till 9 o'clock at night. My main point as a director is it's more productivity to have those people working, let's say from 5 to 6 or even from 11 to 12 in the morning than it is to have them working from 8 to 9 at night. They're all tired and there's nothing going on. So it tends to be, visiting and so forth that's taking place between 8 and 9.
So the idea is basically that the hours are shifting to have
Yeah.
more coverage over the busier time.
Mhm.
Because right now there's only like is it only an hour overlap between the 2 shifts or?
They're kind of, so they added an 11 to 7 shift. So there's more staggering now. So I think if they switch to closing at 8, I don't know if they would keep the 11 to 7 shift. So there would be more overlap, but not as staggered, if you know what I mean. So I think they would go back to 2 different shifts and there would be more overlap.
Okay. Yeah, I remember when we discussed it before, it would allow for more prep for the second shift coming on because they were typically coming on right in the middle of the already busy time. So it was hard
Yeah.
to like get themselves prepared for their shift. So this would allow them more time to sort of ramp up for going into this like really like busy boom in the afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, they might switch to, so like instead of 11 to 7, maybe the second shift is 12 to 8 instead of 1 to 9. And then that would allow more people to be here in the morning. Because I think what they did is they took a couple of people off morning and
Mhm.
shifted it to 11 to 7.
Gotcha.
So now there's like 3 different shifts as opposed to just the 2.
Okay. So I guess Joanne and Tony, do you have any questions? I know I've done a lot of like research and talking to everyone about it, so I'm like well versed, but is there anything you guys have questions or concerns on?
No, I definitely support it. I know from working in a library, night hours can be very quiet. I used to work 5 to 8, and we might get like 6 people in. And when we moved from Altamont 10 to 6, we had no pushback.
Mm.
So if the staff wants it, I'm for it.
Yeah, I went over the numbers too. I think it's fine.
Yeah, and
Okay.
even with Bethlehem, like you can see, I think it's just, I forgot what stat it was, but I think if it was like over 200, like people walking through or like transactions or something, it dropped like 100. So there's still movement, but it does significantly drop in that last hour. And I just think this might just be more anecdotally. I think Bethlehem kind of prides themselves on being the library with the most hours. So I don't think they would ever change it anyway. So even though they might have the stats to be like, hey, it significantly drops, I think they're just so used to being open that late that they wouldn't get rid of it.
Yeah, the numbers are so low, it just seems, it seems like we're using a lot of staff and they're just not supporting like a large, portion of the community. So it seems like their time would be better shifted up, in my opinion. And like I said, I stood there, I went, when I did the listening tour, I went 2 different nights and stood there from 7 to 9 right at the front and just watched like 1 or 2 people trickle in. And then there was people that were sitting there from earlier, but like not a crazy amount of action happening. Like I said, it was like 1 staff per person basically in the library, which just doesn't seem like a good use of time.
Right. And also when you guys have late board meetings, I mean, when your meetings do go to, 9 o'clock, when you walk out in the parking lot, it's just you can see that it's just your cars and the staff cars.
Yeah. So sorry, Joanne, you have a question?
I was just going to say, I know there was a couple board members that were saying for students wise, and I think we could also make the argument, or you could make that argument for opening earlier on a Saturday or staying later on a Saturday, open earlier on a Sunday. So I think 1 hour during the week is not that going to be that difficult to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because I haven't heard anyone make that argument open earlier on Sunday. So I don't think people are looking for more hours for students live.
Right.
Right. I mean, worst case, we get a bunch of pushback and nothing's ever saying we couldn't change it back. But I don't see a compelling reason to not try to, make the staff happier, do something that just seems to make more sense, like statistically. The only thing then is if we do have like a long board meeting that runs until 9, who would close up then? Or for example,
Maintenance. Yeah, maintenance, I think we would still, and so instead of till 11, I think we would shift them to 10, right, 10? Tim? Oh, you're muted.
Tim, you're muted.
Yeah, we would probably shift that to 10, but if we do have a long board meeting, maintenance will have done all their cleaning, while they wait for us. And then I know how to close the building up. So, and Natalie should as well. So assuming that one of us is there, we can do the alarm system and such and lock the doors.
right,
So
yeah,
that's
that
a-
was one question that came up when I was talking to Sarah, because she had asked like, well, what time does your maintenance leave? And I said, I honestly don't know that. So that answered my question right there. If there is community programming like ad hoc that does run late, we would have maintenance there that could close up. So we would not be
Right.
expecting staff to stay.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. And related to Joanne, your suggestion to open earlier on weekends, or your comment that some might talk about that. I think if we were opening earlier, we would serve more people by opening a half an hour earlier on weekdays.
No, yeah, I
And
was just saying
yeah.
that like no one's making that argument that they're looking for
Right.
earlier hours. So like
Okay.
if you that because I would see maybe if they're saying, well, we want Sunday hours earlier for students, but no one's making that argument. So obviously, if a student doesn't need the building all the time, if you could say, well, we're
Yeah.
cutting the hours.
If
Okay.
anything, the feedback I got is like during that like rush period during that afternoon, the staff can sometimes get overwhelmed because there just isn't enough people on. So this would help offset that and put people in when they are needed versus like them just kind of hanging around at night when there's not a ton of, support needed from the staff. So just further making this make sense. So I guess if nobody has any major questions on it, I guess if we're just prepared for whatever questions might come up at the board meeting, we can take a quick vote now and just see if we want to go ahead and make this recommendation. And then Tim will have, 10 plus minutes to go over his things as well. So I'll go ahead and take a vote. We want to make a recommendation that the library close on specifically weeknights. Is that Monday through Friday?
Friday, we already close at 6, so it's Monday through Thursday.
Monday through
And-
Thursday. Okay.
Just as background, I would also say that there is, in my opinion, justification to close at 7, but this is like a compromise position to my mind to close at 8. It serves the community without being as drastic as cutting at 7. So, plus, remember the issue of programming. Like we still want to be able to do evening programming. So closing at 7 would just be severe. Like it would disincentivize the staff from doing programs. But you can start them at 7 and have them over at 8, or you can start them at 6:30 or even 6 and have them over by 8. Or
Yeah.
they can go over till 8:30 and it's
Mhm.
fine because maintenance is still here, so.
Yeah, it seems like we have the coverage. I think the maintenance was the one question that I had coming out of the discussion I had with Sarah earlier today. So it seems like we got the coverage regardless. So, all right, going to a vote for Monday through Thursday, closing at 8 p.m. We want to make this recommendation to the board. Tony?
Yes.
All right, Joanne?
Yeah.
And myself, yes. And Vanessa is not here. Okay. Cool. So we'll do that. And if I have any more questions, Sarah was very kind. She said I can call and ask her questions just from their experience. And then we'll just hopefully, present this data. I will not be at the meeting, so I might need some help. So I don't know who wants to present it. I don't know if somebody from the committee wants to do it or if Tim and Natalie, you want to do it. Either way, But I'll have the meeting notes to you guys, so you'll have that.
If it's, you know, I'm happy to do it. And if one of the board members or Natalie wants to take the lead, I have no problem taking a back seat, but I just want you all to know I'm willing. So
If you send me your notes, Alicia, I can
there you go.
try.
Okay, I
Probably-
appreciate it.
Probably
Yeah,
better for a board member to do it, you know, so.
I may or may not be there. I just can't. I'm just unsure yet because I'll be out in Rochester for my first day in office for my new job, and they have something that runs from 4 to 6, and I have no clue how close it's going to be to my hotel. So I don't want to commit to it just in case. So I'll give you the notes, Joanne, and I think we should be good because this is not the first time we brought it up, so it won't be the first time people are hearing it.
Yeah.
All right, cool. And then Tim, what were your
So I
things?
have 4 things to introduce. I don't think we resolve any of them necessarily, but as the Buildings and Grounds Committee, these are things that are happening. So one, and I'm doing them in reverse order of how important they are or how long they'll take me to talk about. So one is that we've got our final building project landscaping tentatively scheduled for Monday, June 19th. We're trying to figure out, that company's had a hard time finding labor. But we basically told them, if you don't finish this tree planting and such, we're going to hire somebody else. So that's happening on a day that we're closed for the Juneteenth holiday. So we're just trying to make sure they don't need access to anything inside the building. But if they do, I can take care of it. So we hope to be able to report by next week that that the landscaping is done. It should have been done 18, 20 months ago. The second thing is that much as the farmers market hires food trucks for the farmers market, the cafe operators would like to have a food truck on Saturday afternoons in the library parking lot. So they told me about that the other day. I went to Alicia about it. Alicia recommended that I ask Melanie, who's the cafe owner, to write up a document about the business relationship between the food truck and the cafe. And there's and so she's going to do that, and then I'm going to run it by our lawyer and see that everything that is being proposed is being done legally. Much like the cafe itself, there's the possibility of a weekly rental fee from this barbecue operator or truck operator to the library, and or a percentage of sales. It's right now, he's thinking, his name is Josh, he's thinking a percentage of sales as a donation to the library as opposed to a rent. We're all sort of cognizant of the idea that we might become, we might lose our not-for-profit status if we just charge high rents. So that is a pending concept, one that I obviously cannot act on without board approval, but want to make you 3 aware of. So
And you were going to check into the insurance liability as well, right?
Thank you.
It would be in the parking lot and not in the cafe space. So that was my other concern, was just if that just, is above board. So that would be something I think we have to run by the insurance, and then also Chris Lanchanton as well. Is my thinking.
Why don't I pause there and ask if Tony and Joanne and yourself have any questions about that or the landscaping that I already mentioned?
No.
Okay. The next is that if you think about walking into the front of the library and turning left into our main reading room, we've gotten mostly compliments about it all, right? But there is a certain group of people who complain that it looks monolithic and very brown and lacks color and so forth. And so we've been thinking for years about putting a mural up at the above the fish tank, up in the high ceiling. Wish I had a photo to share with you, but we've tried several different ways to create a mural there and have had no real luck. But I'm in talks with a muralist who works out of Brooklyn and who has done work in Albany. And he has given us an estimate to paint a mural up in that space. I think it's around $8,000, which I was actually rather surprised it was so low. Sorry, we have a intercom type system. You know, we're going to need to talk about it some more for a couple of reasons. One, we have no concept right now of what the mural should show. And two, $8,000 is a lot of money. However, there is a mural, a public mural program in Albany or in New York State, which we can apply for, which would pay the artist's fee. So we need to do a little more work on that. I'm just trying to let you know that this is a possibility.
It's called City Walls.
City Walls. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
so it's a grant. It's a grant. I don't know if it will cover the whole thing or part, but that
Okay.
I was told by a local artist that who has done local murals that is how he had gotten paid for that work that he had done was through the City Walls project.
Okay, and we would pay for our portion if there is one through construction grant funding, or excuse me, not construction grant, construction project funding. So remember, we've still got the loan out and we haven't spent all the money. And we just got a call from the school district today, pretty much further pushing back. They now think, they were saying September 30th, we need to close the building project. They're now saying end of the year, 12/30 or 12/31. And so that gives us a little more breathing room. By the same token, for everyone's benefit here, I feel, the school district feels, and our two fiscal officers feel that while good ideas will continue to come, we need to stop having good ideas related to that construction project, because the more good ideas we have, the harder it will be to close it out by December 30th. So I'm not trying to tell you guys what to think, but if somebody says at the board meeting, well, great, let's, build a golf course, or, I'm trying to be ridiculous, but comes up with some idea that's entirely outside of the scope of the original project, it's going to take too much work. There won't be enough time. While we might have the money, we do have to focus on tying it up. But decorating the inside of the library is clearly related to refurbishing the inside of the library. So I'm going to pause there. I have one more item, but see if there are comments or questions about muralizing.
I mean, I would probably be happy to see a mural there. I'm in the camp of things are a little corporate and cold, but I'm used to like these little local, like funky libraries, and that's my like, happy place. So I think it'd be cool and add some like, local flavor on there. So I guess I'd be interested in who owns applying for the grant. Would that come from the board, or would that come from?
I think it's usually the administration that applies for grants. I mean, like, we will always welcome assistance, but basically, I've never seen, like, the board is sometimes required to write a document or to sign a paper, but typically, in my 9 years anyway, the admin has done the work of, filling out the forms and getting the cost estimates and coming up with the conceptual sketches and all that kind of stuff that, frankly, and well, I am going to go ahead and say this, even though I realize only Elish knows what I'm going to say. So I sent an email yesterday to the executive leadership of the board, which is Kathy, Elish, and Narina, updating them on my progress or lack thereof of an RFP for legal services for the library. And part of it was to say, I did clarify with our lawyer that the lawyer is hired by and works for the board. And I'm sounding like a complainer here, but there are something like 7 lawyers on our board, and I would just hope that one of them would hold my hand through that process, since it's something I've never done before. And I got a pretty decent response from Kathy. So, frankly, like, I'd rather that a board member volunteer to help us find a new lawyer or make a new agreement with our current lawyer than that I would imagine the city mural grant process is probably not too onerous either. But so there's that.
So who would mock up the design? That would be you guys as well?
Well, that is open to question. And like, my basic thoughts for me personally are kind of 2 things. One about Guilderland and its history, and the other about, you know, the joy of reading and learning and famous authors and that sort of thing. And, but we haven't really talked on the staff level about that. I don't think we've talked at the board level about that. And the artist sent me an email yesterday and he said, or the artist that we're currently thinking of, and he said, I have some ideas, but I would prefer not to reveal them until I, you know that there's a commitment to go ahead with me as the artist, because they're his conceptions. And if we take the conceptions and then have someone else paint them, then he loses out. I'm sure that I would welcome a kind of a cooperation there between the board, the staff, and even the foundation as to what this mural should depict, because I think it would be really weird if, like, I picked it, or, you know, any individual board member picked it. Like, almost we might want to ask the community, like, what
I was
should
gonna
it?
say like a mural contest or
Mhm.
something.
Yeah,
Something
and
like
just
that.
say like you design the idea and then this artist will make it come to life, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
All
So,
right, so you got a four minutes left, Tim.
so I'm
if
going to
you wanna go
call
over
a
the
little
last
bit
thing.
on Natalie here, but we've had this idea to build a book shed and put it in the employee parking lot. This would be a location for used book sales and for processing used books. And then we might want to design it a little bit large enough to store. There's a bunch of like storage loose ends related to the library project, like extra bookcases and stuff that we like if you go to the board meeting room tomorrow, you'll probably see bookcases lining the windows behind you, that sort of thing. So we wouldn't mind sticking a little extra storage in it. There are some open questions about whether it's construction grant fundable that Natalie can maybe speak to, but one thing we learned yesterday is that if we're using the architect to design it, the state education department would have to review the design, and we probably wouldn't have time before the grant deadline. That doesn't stop us necessarily, but it might put us into buying something that's prefabricated instead of specifically designed for the purpose. Natalie, what am I missing or need to add?
No, I think you're good. I talked to Tim Burke at Upper Hudson, and as long as it's not like one of those like Home Depot, like, you know, plastic sheds, we're fine. It has to be a permanent fixture.
Yeah,
Is Voorheesville considered permanent?
Yep.
yeah, and that's very nice. We might want to just get
Theirs
some
is
plans from
theirs
them.
is
you
nice
know?
and big. I've been in it. It's
Yeah. Yep. So we're working on that. And as you guys may know, as board members, uh, the single biggest complaint suggestion that we get from the public since reopening in 2021 is what happened to the monthly book sales. And there are going to be used book sales through the cafe. They've built a really nice little book corner in the place, but it's going to be pretty low volume. And then, as you may remember from the last board meeting, I think Alicia and Narina were volunteering to staff a table at the farmers market, at least occasional Sundays, to maybe accept donations as well as sell used books. So, we're putting our toe in the water, but probably we will need a bigger operation than the table at the farmer's market or the little closet in the cafe. And then I hate to sound negative, but it is possible that this cafe and even a subsequent cafe will find that they weren't right in terms of judging the market at the library, and they may have to close someday in the future. So I was just thinking about that this morning, not because I like to meditate on possible failures, but maybe at that point we line the walls of the Norman Skill room with wall-mounted bookcases and do a real bookshop in there that also happens to serve coffee. But of course, we want our cafe to succeed, and that's that's where we're at right there. But it's space we could use for book sales, which the public appears to be clamoring for, if in fact the cafe concept turned out to be unsuccessful. So
So is this
All of
another
this
thing
is,
that would come out of that loan?
probably not, because the cafe would have to be unsuccessful pretty quick. And then I
No,
almost
no,
think
the
that-
shed, would this be part of
oh,
the
yeah,
building
yeah,
loan?
yep, it would.
Okay.
Yep. Or through, well, you can't take it out of the loan and out of the construction grant program, because you can't use bonded funds as your
Right.
matching funds. Yeah.
I
But
think we would ask the foundation. So usually GPL they qualify for a 50% match for construction grants, or up to 50%. So I was suggesting, because I think book sales are exactly what the foundation should be doing, that we ask the foundation to be the other 50% match. And then when we get the facility, they kind of figure out how we can do book sales again.
Okay. Yeah, I talked to Sarah as well about her feedback on the shed, and she said that, it's been really successful there. She said the only really negative is that people will dump book donations there, and
Yeah.
they have to filter through it, but it's run by their friends group. So
Yep.
that's who runs their shed. So I guess we'd have to figure out sorting. And then just on a side note, for the table for the farmers market, has anything gotten figured out with like who's pulling the books, or if we have any stuff for that?
No.
Because I'm happy to jump in whenever y'all have that.
We haven't really. What I think we ought to do is, if it's you and Narina that are interested, we should pick like 3 or 4 Sundays max over the course of the summer, and have Luann put it out on social media that we'll be accepting like up to 5 used books, and we'll be selling used books, but we just haven't gotten there yet. So I think if we picked dates, that would make us act on our end, and you all might be sitting there thinking, well, why don't they just pick the dates? But A, we wouldn't know that you guys were available, and B, like we are just in constant, there's just always like, legal stuff that has to be done. Like, putting together a plan to sell used books just isn't really
Right.
one of the most important things that's on our plate. So, and yet it is one of the most important things that the public wants.
Okay, I'll get Narina together, and we can just collaborate with you guys together, since she's not on this call,
Yeah.
and see what we can figure out. I'll work out some dates with her, because I know there's some days I'm going to be gone, but
It'd be cool if you guys, like, I'm sorry to push, but if you had a couple dates before the board meeting, because then it's not like that dead moment in the board meeting. Like, has anybody done anything about used book sales? Well, no.
Yeah. And just,
well,
I think,
she'll be at the dinner tonight, so I'll
Yeah.
talk to her. I'm giving her a
Okay.
ride back home.
Cool.
and I believe
Yep.
the deadline for the construction grant that it has to be at Upper Hudson is July 26th.
So Natalie, it sounds like our next step is one of us should email Sarah, find out how they designed and
Yep.
built their shed,
Mhm.
and see if that same contractor's around,
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Cool. Good
All
deal.
right.
Any questions from any of the 3 board members? And anything, Natalie, that you think we needed to cover that we didn't?
No, I think we nailed it.
Okay, this is a great example of an awesome meeting. May I have one more minute?
I think so. I think Joanne's the one that had the time.
I can have another minute. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks. So I'm thinking about sending an email to the board, which I would do after the board meeting, because we're all getting ready for the board meeting tomorrow, but the July meeting's coming up, and I don't mean for this to sound disrespectful, but most of our board committees don't meet and don't get anything done. And I think in part that's because we have too many committees and they're too large. So I kind of am toying with recommending to the board that we go down to 2 or 3 committees. The model that I've heard of is a finance committee and an operations committee. The operations basically would be everything that's not finance. Or you could do a finance committee and an operations committee and a personnel committee, because personnel stuff often involves legalities, and it's related to finance. So you could lump it in with finance. And then in the bylaws, which, like, I'm not a legalistic letter of the law person who says you should follow the bylaws absolutely perfectly. I think you should, but we're human beings with busy lives, right? But in the bylaws, it says, first of all, it says that our board meeting is on the second Thursday of the month, but we moved it to the third Thursday a few years ago without changing the bylaws. But the other thing is it says the board meeting's on the second Thursday of the month, and the fourth Thursday of the month needs to be reserved for meetings of the committees. And so I think if we standardize the meeting times of a reduced number of committees, we'd be more functional. And so I'm thinking of typing something like that up. I certainly welcome comments right back at me, but I just think our current system is kind of designed to fail. Natalie put in the chat, the UHLS has the finance committee, the services committee, and the admin committee. What does admin do, Natalie?
Personnel and stuff like the long range planning.
Okay, yeah.
Is that
So
something you're going to draft up to discuss on this meeting so we can make sure it's on the agenda?
what, tomorrow's board meeting?
Is that when you wanted to bring it up, or is this for
No,
another?
I thought I'd do it right after the board meeting, just because of I'm in a time crunch, and perhaps you are too. But you know, like I don't know that, and I'll speak frankly, I don't know that Kathy or any other board members love getting a major concept, you know, dumped on them 24 hours before a board meeting. So that's
No, I
kind
was
of
just
where.
curious. I was just
Yeah.
making sure if it was for next meeting
But
to
it would need
introduce
to
and then
be
work
it would
on
need
in
to be
July. Okay.
thought about in the month preceding the July meeting. So, you know, your question is a really good one. I think what I'll do is say what I just said to you guys during the new business section tomorrow night. Because Kathy always says, does anybody else have any new business? If there's reasonable amount of support for moving forward, then Natalie and I can, you know, perhaps take a look at how UHLS is doing it, how Bethlehem's doing it, and try to simplify all of our lives. Like if I were a board member, I have taken under you guys' term to thanking you all the time for your volunteer time. But if I were a board member, I'd be feeling like some dissonance, like especially if I was chairing a committee that never really got around to meeting and so forth. I'd be like, you know, I can't give this board everything that it needs according to the bylaws because I don't have enough time, you know, I got a job and a family. So I think we need to simplify. So that's me.
I say introduce it and then have it for discussion for July so people can mull it over, I guess. But
I will
Alright.
probably send an email to the top three, the executives, you know, Kathy, Elish, and Narina, and just say, I'd like to say this under new business, you know, but not really flesh it out, you know, because nobody likes to be surprised. So
yeah, that sounds perfect. All right. Thanks for staying a little bit over your hard stop, Joanne. I appreciate it. And
All right.
thanks all for meeting kind of last minute. I want to make sure we got this in before the meeting since we have to make a call on the hours prior to
Okay.
July. So thanks everyone for coming on their lunch break. And if you
Thanks
have
all.
any to add, just send me an email.
okay, thanks
All right.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.